Hey, this is Antonio. Welcome back to my channel. Now, who's ready for some fighting words? In this video, I want to do a fight breakdown for Errol Spence versus Terence Bud Crawford. I've already done a fight breakdown for Terence Bud Crawford versus Errol Spence. So this is the fight breakdown for Errol Spence, just to make it even and make it fair. It should be in this corner, the link for that video. Please check it out if you have not already checked it out. Please like this video, please share this video, please subscribe to the channel, please leave a thumbs up, and also write me a comment. So without further ado, let's jump into it. The first thing you're going to notice when you look at Errol Spence, at least for me, the first thing that I've always noticed with Errol Spence was he's big for the division. You know, a lot of people used to call him a weight bully. I didn't think he was a weight bully. I personally don't believe in, I'm not going to say I don't believe in weight bully, but I'll say if a guy is easily making weight, you know, then I don't really consider him a weight bully. If that's the case, you can say the Tank is a weight bully. You can say a lot of people are weight bullies because a lot of people don't make weight, you know. So I've never really considered Errol Spence a weight bully because he always made weight and he made it, you know, I never heard any stories about him like killing himself literally or anything like that to make weight. So therefore, I don't consider him a weight bully, but he is big for the division. I mean, he clearly is going to end out his career at maybe like 160, but that's neither here nor there. One of the things that I noticed when I first, saw Errol Spence fight was just how durable he was. He's a tank. The guy just keeps coming. He's like the Terminator. He's not going to stop. He can absorb punishment to give punishment. But the way he fights, I mean, he fights in a way that he can take that punishment because he's never really, he hardly gets hit clean. Like, he does get hit. Errol Spence is not hard to hit, but to hit him cleanly is something else. He's a very consistent fighter, which makes him difficult to deal with. Now you got a tank that's coming at you, that's consistent, that's throwing like 100 punches around. That's what he's going to do. He's the Energizer Bunny, and he's just going to keep coming at you and coming at you. He literally is like boxing's definition of the Terminator. He's not going to stop. He's not going to quit. He's going to keep coming every round. There's two ways out. Your people can wave the flag, or the referee's going to save you, or you're going out and you're sleeping. So I take that back. There's three ways for you to go out. But he's not going to stop. He's a very consistent fighter, and a lot of people succumb to his consistency. Like, it's one thing to just give somebody a lot of pressure and to be up in their face the entire time. It's something to give somebody a lot of pressure, be up in their face the entire time, then cut off the ring. Then it's something else to do those two things, and then you're throwing 100 punches around, and it's like there's no rest, there's no break, there's no, let's just chill for a moment. There's none of that. He's not going to chill. He's not going to stop. He's literally going to keep throwing punch after punch after punch. And that breaks guys down. Errol Spence is not like a knockout artist or anything like that. He's definitely not a one-punch guy, but he doesn't have to because he's literally going to break you down. You know, he reminds me of Bernard Hopkins. Bernard Hopkins was not, yes, he was, you know what? The executioner was the right word for him because he was executing you. He wasn't going to just get it done. He wasn't a one-and-done type of guy. Bernard Hopkins was going to chop the tree down. And when you look at Errol Spence, he's chopping trees down. That's what he does. Consistency kills people. Great defense. So remember what I just said about the way that he fights, and he's very durable. Well, another thing with the way that he fights, he can fight that way because he's a very sound defensive fighter. It can look like he's reckless sometimes because he's always pressing forward. Sometimes he just put his head straight forward and just get, throwing those hooks. But it's not that, because a lot of times when guys are firing back, they're catching them, but they're just like grazing off of them. It's never anything clean. A lot of things just kind of brush off of them. Like I said, hardly ever do you see Errol Spence get hit consistently with solid punches. You hardly ever see it. He might get tagged once here and tagged once there, maybe even twice there. But it's not like somebody's throwing like a full-blown combination on Errol Spence and he got tagged solidly all throughout that combination. I've never seen that with Errol Spence. He slips a lot of punches. The way he fights, it can look like, he's taking a shot when he really isn't. He's an amazing inside fighter, which is where all this is coming from. He's going to force that action. He's going to force... Errol Spence can box. He's actually a great boxer, but I think his bread and butter is fighting on the inside because he's such a durable guy. It works to his favor because he can take a lot of punishment and he can give that punishment. Also because he's very athletic. But he's a great boxer. If he wants to stand outside, I don't particularly think staying outside is the best place for Errol Spence fighting Terence Crawford. But he can do that with other opponents. You look at Mikey Garcia. Mikey Garcia is a guy who likes to kind of stand on the outside a lot of times. And he tried that with Errol Spence and it didn't go too well for him. Errol beat him from pillar to post. It didn't go too well for him. But he fought on the outside. He didn't have to go to the inside. So I'm just saying that to say his boxing ability. Is he as versatile as Terence Bud Crawford? No, I don't think he is. But can he fight in a telephone booth? Yes. And can he fight from a range? Yes, he can definitely do that as well. An amazing jab. One of the things I always talk about on this channel is, guys who have nice jabs and don't use them or are not consistent with their jabs. Well, Errol Spence is a very consistent puncher when it comes to his jab. He utilizes jab is a weapon. It's a weapon, and it's a great weapon to have. And a lot of people, for some reason, just don't use it. And I can't explain why, but they just don't use it. And he's great at using that weapon. He's great at understanding. One, you can use the jab for, distance, and you can set things up. Two, you can use the jab for a rangefinder. You can find out, make sure you know where your guy is when you set him up. And then three, for punching. Simple as that. Errol Spence uses his jab for all three of those things. And he's consistently using the jab. So you don't know what you're getting. And he's got power in those jabs too. Like I said earlier, he's not a one-punch knockout guy, but he's a very heavy-handed guy. So he's not the type of guy you want to stand in front of. He's not the type of guy who, is he going to get you out of there in one punch? No, he's not going to get you out of there in one punch. But he's also not the type of guy who, you want to press your luck with. I remember it was Andre Berto when he was fighting Floyd Mayweather. And he said, he's not the hardest puncher in the world, but I can't take a lot of these one up to the other. I need to move. And that's the thing with Errol Spence. I mean, obviously, I believe Errol Spence is a lot harder puncher than Floyd Mayweather. But it's the same notion. He's not going to get you out of there with one punch, but you cannot just stand there and allow for those punches to accumulate. Because if you let that man get in his mojo and get on his groove, it's going to be a problem for you later on. He's a vicious body puncher. This is what the man is known for. This is where the man lives. He wants to go downstairs and destroy your ribs. He wants to break your ribs. He wants to break you down. It is probably the safest place to break a guy down because it's easy to go to the body and then go upstairs. A lot of people like to go upstairs and then every once in a while go to the body. I think body punching is I don't want to say like a lost art, but you don't see a lot of people doing it the way they used to do it back in the day. I'm talking like the early 2000s. I'm talking like the 90s. I'm talking like the 80s. Guys don't go to the body the way they used to go to the body. Errol Spence to me is just a throwback fighter. My own personal belief, you can put Errol Spence in any era. You can put Errol Spence in the early 2000s. You can put Errol Spence in the 90s. You can put Errol Spence in the 80s. And Errol Spence would still be Errol Spence. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to be a unified champion, but I definitely believe, regardless of what era you put him in, he's still going to end up being a champion. He's going to hold some strap. That I would strongly agree with. Cardio. Listen, people. Errol Spence is literally the Terminator. He just keeps coming for you and going at you. He doesn't stop. He's got fuel for days. And it's not just the punching that wears people down. It's not just the pressure that wears people down. This dude has energy for days. The thing with Errol Spence is this. He gets better as the fight goes on. Some people wind down. He winds up as the fight goes on. That's one of the major things that makes Errol Spence dangerous. It's not like, okay, he had a really good round there, but he's going to be tired after that. No, he had a great round. He's about to get even better because he just had a great round. That's how Errol Spence is. And that cardio breaks people. All these things, the durability breaks people. Listen, when you hit somebody and they don't go nowhere, that messes with your mind. I can tell you personally, it messes with your mind. And you have a guy who's consistent and he's not letting up. And there's no free round. We're not gonna take a break. We're not gonna tie each other up and take a breather. There's none of that. Okay? There's none of that. That's what Errol Spence is. He's a demolisher. He just won't stop. He's literally like a big. You remember the big wheels, the monster trucks, how they just roll over things? They roll over the other cars. That's what Errol Spence is in a boxing ring. He's just gonna keep rolling over the competition, and they succumb. They succumb to the pressure. They succumb to the cardio. They succumb to the consistency. They succumb to those peppering shots. They succumb to all these things. I talked about the vicious body attack. We gotta talk about those hooks. Errol Spence will hook you to death. I remember Roy Jones used to say, "I'm the best hooker in the game." I don't know. Errol Spence is a pretty good hooker. Like, he can throw them hooks, and I mean back to back to back to back. And he's great at mixing it up with downstairs and upstairs when he's throwing those hooks, especially if he's fighting off the back foot. How he'll just go down and then come back up. He's good at that. Like, Errol Spence is it's gonna be an interesting fight between Errol Spence and Terence Bud Crawford. What worries me about this fight when it comes to Errol Spence is Spence does know how to box, but again, his bread and butter is kind of just going through his opponents, going through the opposition. And at some point, the more Spence fights, the more the rounds, go on and on and on and accumulate, he turns into that. He will start off boxing, and then he turns into this juggernaut who's just going to, steamroll you. And that's something that worries me because, the first thing is Bud is really great at wrestling. And I don't know what Errol's going to do when he tries to muscle Bud and Bud outmuscles him. I personally think Bud is stronger, at least in a clinch, than Errol Spence. And I don't know what that's going to do for Errol Spence when that's taken away from him. When the ability to muscle somebody back and have your way with them. And they say, no, I'm in control right here. And I'm going to put you in this position, and I'm going to put you against the ropes. I don't know how that's going to play out for Errol, to be honest with you. I don't know what happens then in that fight, because that's going to be a game changer, and that's going to be something. We saw bits and pieces of that with the Kell Brook fight. We saw glimpses of that with the Sean Porter fight. But I personally believe that Bud is going to be a lot stronger in the clinch. I think Bud, like I said in my breakdown for Bud versus Errol Spence, I think Bud is deceptively strong. And I think because Bud is coming from a lower weight class, granted he's been at this weight class, at welterweight, 147 for a few years now, but still, the thought, well, I'm not letting this little man muscle me down. Yeah, I think Bud's stronger. I honestly think Bud is going to be stronger in the clinch. And I don't know what that's going to do for Errol once he gets in the inside and he's not finding success there. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, worst case scenario, you could just jump back to the outside. Yeah, you would think that. But one, the way Errol fights, the psychology of this that's another thing that worries me. Errol Spence knows how to Errol Spence. And what I mean by that is he kind of has a one-dimensional way of fighting. And he's going to Errol Spence the situation. He's like Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao has one way of fighting. Manny Pacquiao is not a defensive fighter. He's not the type of guy who's going to back up. He's just not going to do that. It is what it is. He's just not going to do it. He's going to continue to Manny Pacquiao the situation to either he gets knocked out or he wins. Errol Spence is the same way. I feel like Errol Spence doesn't have the same amount of versatility as Terence Bud Crawford. And that's what worries me, because once Terence Bud Crawford gets Spence in a position that he's not comfortable with, or he's on the back foot, how's he going to respond? Is he going to say, okay, I'm going to change this up? Or is he going to say, hold on, let me really step my foot on this gas in Errol Spence's situation? That's what I'm worried about. I don't foresee him saying, you know what, I'm just going to try something different. I just foresee him saying, I'm about to Errol Spence this whole situation. That's, for me, that's worrisome. Like I said, that's his bread and butter, fighting on the inside. And I just see, I can see, not saying I see, but I can see, and there's a difference, because I know when I get some comments about that, there's a difference. I can see Bud taking that from him. I can see that. And I think that's going to be a problem. That's one of my biggest things. I think that the overall question of this fight is the range and the pace. Bud is not a fast-paced fighter. He's not. He's a sniper. And Errol Spence is he's one of those. He's a machine gun fighter. And the pace is going to dictate a lot of things. But like I just said, as the fight goes on, Errol Spence is going to get into his groove. And he's going to get hotter and hotter and hotter. And that pace could actually pick up as the rounds go on, which could work in his favor. But that pace, when it comes to Errol Spence, is highly attached to the range. So yeah, he'll pick up the pace and he'll throw a lot of punches and things like that. But I think a lot of times when it comes to Errol Spence, his pace picks up with the shortening or the closing in and the spacing. So yeah, that could be an issue. That could be an issue for both guys, okay? Because I don't foresee Bud ever catching up to Errol Spence's pace and the output of punches. But Bud is a great counterpuncher. So no, he doesn't necessarily have to catch up to the pace. He just has to catch the timing, which I think he can do. That being said, okay, he can catch the timing. What about the spacing? Well, Bud can fight on the outside, no problem. Bud can fight on the inside, no problem. So those two things worry me about this fight. I think it's going to be interesting. I really do. I think it's just going to be an interesting fight. I think a lot of things, the biggest factors, the pace, what happens when Bud switches stance, okay, that too, and then the spacing. Because, again, this fight is all about versatility. We all know what Bud can do in terms of versatility. The question is, what can Spence do in terms of versatility? Is he going to Errol Spence this situation, or is he going to say, all right, that's not working. I need to do something else. I need to do something else now. I'm down 3 rounds or 4 rounds or whatever the case may be. Or I got hurt in the last round. I got to do something else. So that's basically my fight breakdown.